Tell us what happened with that for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, so he's accused of shooting at a childhood friend. It was like a friend from high school. I think he's definitely going to go to trial and put like a big fight up. But, you know, if he gets convicted, he could go to jail. It's just kind of a question of whether he gets convicted or not. But a while back, where the judge looked at the evidence from prosecutors to decide if there's enough to hold him over for trial.
Hi, everyone. We're here with Meg, the reporter. It's exciting that you're here. Tell me how you got that name.
You know, I was covering the Tory Lanez trial, and he was on trial for shooting Megan Thee Stallion, and a lot of people on Twitter noticed that I shared the same name as Meghann, so I became Meghann the reporter. It kind of just started in the Twitter replies, and then also I was at Law and Crime News, and the host, Jesse Weber, he's one of the hosts of Law and Crime Network. When I was doing an interview, I think on the first day of trial, he called me that, and then it definitely took to the Twitter replies and stuck through the trial and on.
Interesting. How long have you been a reporter for?
About 20 years now. I mean, if you count, I don't count high school, but in college, we definitely considered ourselves professional reporters when we were at the Oregon Daily Emerald. But that was also just college newspaper. But I interned at a newspaper in Bend, Oregon in summer 2005, and then went back to University of Oregon and finished up there and went up to the Spokesman Review in Spokane, Washington, and did an internship in the Idaho legislature with their reporter, and then went up to Coeur d'Alene and was covering schools and got hired full-time there. And that was like 2006.
So you went to school for journalism, or you skipped that?
Yeah, I went to school for journalism, but I also double majored in political science. So I always kind of had an eye for the law. And journalism is one of those things where sitting in a classroom and like talking about journalism definitely isn't the same as going out and doing journalism. So I felt like I got way more out of working at the college paper, and I liked my political science classes better than the journalism classes.
How long have you been living in LA?
You know, I moved down to Southern California in 2013 to work at the Orange County Register. So I've been down here for about 10 years now, 11 years.
Oh, wow. I moved here in 2012.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
So we were both here about the same time then.
Yeah. So where did you move from? Seattle?
I actually moved from Boise, Idaho. I worked at the Spokesman Review, and then I went to the Idaho Statesman and was working at the Idaho Statesman. But Boise is not as exciting as Southern California. So when the Orange County Register was hiring, I wanted to find a way to get down here, and that was an excuse to move to Southern California.
How did you get involved with like all these cases, like in the, what would I say, like the urban community or like the music industry?
Yeah, you know, it just started from a natural extension of me covering courts for like the Los Angeles Daily Journal, which is a newspaper for lawyers, and then law.com and ALM got me really used to covering lawyers, paying attention to the court documents and court dockets and covering trials. So I went to Law and Crime News, which was more mainstream. I spent so many years like siloed in these trade publications that weren't covering mainstream stuff, except for maybe mainstream stuff for lawyers. So going to Law and Crime News gave me like a new outlet to take the skills I use.
Is that a company?
Yeah, it's
like a streaming platform?
Yeah, Law and Crime Network. They made a name for themselves streaming the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, and they have a website that covers.
So they're on YouTube?
Yeah, they're on YouTube, and then they've got a website. So I wrote for their website for 6 months or so.
So you started with the Johnny Depp thing?
Actually, that was before I worked at Law and Crime, but they got so much attention from that they were expanding, and they were looking for like more West Coast coverage. So I became their senior West Coast correspondent in last summer, actually.
So then you just started taking celebrity cases since the Johnny Depp case?
Yeah, they were interested in celebrity cases in LA. So the first one that I really covered for them was Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit against LA County over the Kobe Bryant crash photos. And then I covered Cardi B was on trial in Orange County for
with Tasha K?
No, actually, this was a really silly one. The one with Tasha K was over in Northern District of Georgia in Atlanta federal court. But this was a guy who actually sued her because a bit of his tattoo was used on the cover to her mixtape Gangsta Bitch Music Volume 1. So he sued her for like a trade dress likeness infringement. So that was a trial that she actually testified in. She ended up winning it.
Yeah.
The defense sided with her. But That was like October 2022. And then around that same time, Harvey Weinstein started, and then also Danny Masterson. And they were all at the criminal courthouse in downtown LA. So I was up there all the time covering those cases. And then we heard that there was another trial starting in December, and it was rapper Tory Lanez, who was accused of shooting Megan Thee Stallion. So I was already going up there all the time.
So you accidentally fell into it.
Yes. Yeah.
So you weren't planning on like covering just these cases.
No, and at that point when we'd heard about the Tory Lanez trial,
did you know who these people were before?
No, I knew who Megan Thee Stallion was, but I had not heard of Tory Lanez, and I didn't know the whole background and like what a big drama the shooting had been, and how much like internet hype there was surrounding it.
So you went viral? Is that what happened?
Yeah, it was.
Because I saw you're not really much on Instagram. I'm more of an Instagram girl. We're gonna get a Twitter soon, but
yeah.
I heard you're like really big on Twitter.
Yeah, I need to get bigger on Instagram and kind of go out with all the platforms, but especially working in trade publications and law.com, it seemed like Twitter was the voice for covering trials for a long time. Like when I started at Law and Crime, Adam Klasfeld has a big presence on Twitter. So he and I kind of shared the same view for how to cover trials like remotely or through Twitter like that. So I saw that as being like a good opportunity to keep showcasing what I was doing. But it's also very written based, but just being able to share like quick information about what was going on in the trial. Like it was so easy to go into the trial, sit down and take notes, and then you come out and you can just pick up your phone and like type something real quick that's like an update about what just happened in there. It was so quick. But it was my first experience outside of really being siloed in the trade publication. So I was still trying to figure out social media. I mean, I actually looked back and went on YouTube and reread my Twitter threads just a couple of days ago, did like a look back at the trial threads. And I was like, wow, this feels like it was so long ago, because I've learned so much about social media and like how to develop a platform since then,
Interesting.
Yeah.
What cases are you working on now?
Right now, let's see. Coming up, 𝐴$AP Rocky is going to go on trial in LA. Not for a while. He doesn't have a trial date yet, but he's accused of first-degree assault with a firearm. And he's got his arraignment on January 8th.
Can you tell us what happened with that for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so he's accused of shooting at a childhood friend. It was like a friend from high school, 𝐴$AP Relly. A couple of years ago, they have surveillance video of him confronting Relly, and you can see a gun in his hand, 𝐴$AP Rocky. And then there's other surveillance video that shows off in the distance what prosecutors say is the shooting. So he actually just had a preliminary hearing a while back where the judge looked at the evidence from prosecutors to decide if there's enough to hold him over for trial, and ruled that, yeah, he needs to go to trial. Because there's a video. Yeah, that there was enough evidence. Do you think he's going to go to jail? It. I think he's definitely going to go to trial and put like a big fight up. But, if he gets convicted, he could go to jail. It's just kind of a question of whether he gets convicted or not. But that'll definitely be one to...
Do you think they have good evidence against him?
I think the prosecutor thinks the videos that they have are pretty solid, but they don't show the actual shooting. So I think he has a lot to work with, but that's just another one that's coming down the pike that, I mean, he's a lot more famous than Tory Lanez too. So I think when that actually goes, that's going to get more attention. But there's a lot of interesting cases in LA too that like aren't necessarily celebrity based, but
okay, what else?
Like LA federal courts does a lot of public corruption cases involving LA politicians. There's actually a former LA city councilman who ran downtown for like 15 years. I mean, if you've ever gone downtown and just wondered why it's such a shithole, like has something to do with the fact that the city councilman who ran downtown for 15 years was like so corrupt you couldn't get a meeting with him unless you like bought him a prostitute or like bribed him or something. So yeah, so all
What's
these
his
empty
name?
𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐎. So all these development projects downtown, like big condo buildings that are empty, all these, I mean, there's so much vacant space downtown. It's because he didn't really have like a holistic vision for developing downtown LA. He was very pay to play. So developers had to like pay him money or give him
So
bribes
he's being
to get somewhere.
charged?
He actually was charged and he pleaded guilty to some pretty serious federal crimes. And his plea deal with prosecutors called for them to recommend a prison sentence between 9 to 13 years.
9 to 13 years?
Yeah. And the judge, there's some thought that the judge is going to give him more than that. Because, I mean, I'm like, Judge Walter needs to make 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻 get at least as many years in prison as he served on the council, right? I mean, that seems fair. But that's coming up at the end of the
But why
month.
do you think he pleaded guilty if he's going to do that much time anyway?
It was because his brother and his wife, like his brother ended up getting indicted by the feds, and maybe not indicted. He took a plea deal, a cooperating plea deal, where he was going to testify against him.
His own brother?
Yeah, his own brother.
Wow.
His own brother. And his family was just getting caught up in the whole thing. And I think it was probably the idea of, if you did go to trial, like, would there be any chance he wouldn't be convicted of this? And like the public humiliation factor for his wife and his kids.
So wait, when did he step down?
2020.
Do you feel like this was big news? Because I don't feel like it was big enough news.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's big news. I mean, the LA Times covers it, and you see some coverage in the TV stations, but it seems like very insulated, like political news in LA. There's like so many different sects of LA that I don't think like the urban like celebrity community really pays that much attention to like what's going on at City Hall, because it kind of is just like, I mean, a lot of people just kind of assume politicians are corrupt, but when you actually get into the details of like everything that happens in these cases, they're pretty wild. I sat in trial.
Tell me something
and
that said some people would think is wild.
So 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻's right-hand man was a young guy who was actually the son of somebody that he grew up with. And he lived in Boyle Heights, which is a working class neighborhood. You know, he lived in his grandparents' house and started working for 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻 when he was like in his early 20s.
Wait, I'm going to need you to run that back. Say it again.
So 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻,
his right-hand man.
Yeah.
Lived with him?
Lived with his grandparents. This was just like some young guy who grew up in Boyle Heights, lived with his grandparents.
He was like adopted by another family?
I mean, I think that's a typical situation for, you know, a living situation where, you know, he had a room at his grandparents' house while he was working for this city councilman.
Okay.
And he ended up getting like really involved in all the corruption. Like there's all these photos of him going to Vegas with, there's a Chinese billionaire who's trying to build a big project in downtown LA. So he was buttering up 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻 by taking him to all these like lavish trips to Las Vegas. And the billionaire had like a right-hand man who was like a young guy. And so did 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻 had this right-hand man who was a young guy, George Esparza. And you could tell just through the photos that George and Ricky had like a real bromance. Like all the photos of them on like private jets in Vegas and like all the hanging out and like just like rendezvous in Las Vegas. But it was totally illegal for George to be doing that because he worked for a city councilman. So he's like participating in this racketeering public corruption bribery scheme. And he ended up getting indicted for it. And he took a plea deal. And so he was going to testify against 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻. And he testified in some other trials, but he actually pleaded guilty like almost 3 or 4 years ago now, and he still hasn't been sentenced because there's one guy who's supposed to go on trial next year. He was one of the deputy mayors in downtown LA who the prosecutors say knew about 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐻's whole racketeering scheme and was like helping him with it. So he hasn't pleaded guilty yet. It's still unresolved. He's like the last defendant. And I think in March he's supposed to go to trial. So it's kind of this interesting window into all the corruption from the people who run LA.